Welcome into Beyond the Rings, a series where we sit down with Olympic athletes and broadcasters to talk life in quarantine and how they're all fighting to keep their Olympic dreams alive. In this episode, we sat down with Kate Scott, one who has never shied away from the grind of being a sports broadcaster. The Cal Berkeley graduate works as a full-time play-by-play announcer and in-studio host for the PAC-12 and NBC networks. She reflects back on life before COVID-19 and how the postponement of the 2020 Tokyo Games may have just been a blessing in disguise for her own Olympic dreams. Welcome back, episode 3 of Beyond the Rings. I'm joined here by Pac-12 broadcaster Kate Scott. Kate, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Gabrielle.
And of course, Kate, I gotta just start off by asking, how are you doing during this very tumultuous time in history?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? It depends on the minute I'm finding. I feel different almost every minute. Some minutes I'm feeling incredibly grateful to still have my job, to have a house, to be, financially stable, so many things that I think oftentimes we take for granted. But after having so many friends laid off or furloughed in the past couple of weeks, it's really come into focus.
I want to go backwards a little bit to just about 1 month ago. It was March 11th that really the world kind of started shutting down, but March 8th, 2020, International Women's Day. Can you just describe what happened that day and why it was so significant?
It's crazy to think it's only been a month. It feels like 3 years ago at this point. So that day was significant because I woke up in Chicago and got to be a part of the first all-female NHL broadcast in the United States. And it just happened to be, two hockey teams that nobody's ever heard about, the defending Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues and the 3-time in the last decade Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks at the United Center. How many championships did Michael Jordan and the Bulls win there? How many championships have the Blackhawks won there? I mean, it's just such a story building. And in addition to the entire broadcast being a big deal, it was the first time I'd ever called hockey at any level. So don't suck. That's just what I kept telling myself all day. So it was a remarkable day. We went over to the United Center. Kendall Coyne-Schofield, Olympic gold medalist with the U.S. women's hockey team just a couple years ago. AJ Malesko, Olympic gold medalist with the U.S. women's hockey team back in 1998. They were we hear so much about the 99ers, the women's soccer team that won the World Cup, but the 98ers are kind of the team when it comes to hockey that set all that in motion. So those were my analysts for the game. We went over to the United Center for morning skate, which is like shoot around in hockey. And there was a lot of cameras there who understandably wanted to interview us and talk to us because it was a big deal. Went back to the hotel for like 45 minutes, got clothes on real quick, grabbed a bite to eat, went back to the arena, more interviews. It was just such a whirlwind. And then, I think the broadcast was about 6 p.m. local time in Chicago, and called my first NHL game, and it was wild and fun, and I thought we did a really great job. And that was that. So it was an incredibly big night, I think, in my career. It was a big night for NBC. And it also, as I'm sure you know, turned out to be one of the last hockey games played. There was only a couple more hockey games played that week because, as you mentioned, March 11th, that's when everything shut down.
College athletics, NBA basketball.
Yeah.
These are all things that happen within the borders of the United States. Before this time, within the borders of Europe and countries like Italy, sports were being shut down.
Yeah.
But when you heard the news, the Olympic Games will be postponed for a whole nother year, what went through your head when you heard that news?
Yeah, my first thought, the same as when, the NBA and the NCAA seasons were postponed or canceled. Just devastated for all the people who were the, obviously not first responders, but the first level, right? The student athletes, the pro athletes, the coaches, the trainers, everybody who that is their life. And they work so hard at that every single day to not get the opportunity to play or coach. I was just devastated. And the same went I don't know if you can say to another level, but in a way to another level for the Olympic athletes, because it's only an every 4-year thing, right? And for so many of these athletes, as I've learned over the years of covering the Olympic sports, like they're also working 3 jobs. I mean, I heard it from AJ and Kendall when we were prepping for the hockey game that, it's so hard to find ice time, and it's so hard to find workout time, and it's so hard to find time when everybody on the team can even get together if you're playing a team sport, because you live everywhere and there's kids. And so to know just the layers of work and time and sacrifice that they put in, and knowing also that there's a 4-year ramp up period, right? It's not just, 3 months getting ready for that season. Again, not to downplay those preparations, but there is a 4-year arc when it comes to getting ready to peak right when the Olympic Games are happening. So to know all of those things, and all of these athletes had either planned their performance to peak now, and also have so many things that they were hoping to do as soon as the games ended, right? They had planned out the next 5 to 10 years of their lives. Okay, I'm going to win gold at this Olympics, and then the next year will be all about promoting myself, and then I'll transition into this. And all of that has been thrown just completely off kilter. So mostly just feeling for them. Obviously, I'm wearing my Olympic rings bracelets that my nephew gave me last Christmas, because he knows how badly I hope to call my first Olympics. And there was a chance that Tokyo could be it, and there's still a chance that it could.
You now have 2 big dreams in your career. One is to call a World Cup soccer game, and the other is, you just mentioned it again, to broadcast an Olympic Games.
Mm-hmm.
How did that hockey game on International Women's Day help fuel that dream of possibly broadcasting the Olympic Games?
Yeah. Well, to use the fire analogy, I think it was kind of the embers were already there, kind of the end of a fire, right? When you're thinking, do I throw another log on, or do I just want to let it burn out and I'll go to bed in about an hour and a half? I think the hockey game threw like a whole tree of wood on top of that fire and just ignited it. And now the Olympic flame is burning bright, to be as corny as I possibly can. But yeah, I mean, that was the long view 4 years ago when I started working with NBC National. I'd done a lot of work with NBC Bay Area as I have built up in my career. But I knew that if I wanted to call the Olympics, I needed to go to the mothership in Stamford, Connecticut, and make connections and figure out a way to slowly get a pinky in there and then a hand, and, open that door. And the first thing that they offered for me to call, because they don't have very many just lower level sports, right? They have the NHL, they have the NFL on Sunday night, they have the Kentucky Derby, they have the Olympics, they have these huge things that, a 32-year-old who's mostly calling college sports probably isn't prepared for yet. But they offered me A-10 women's basketball, which is kind of like the Pac-12, but on the East Coast. So it's Richmond, and it's UMass, and it's St. Louis, and it's on the other side of the country. But I said yes, knowing again that that was going to be my foot in the door to hopefully push it open and give me the chance to impress people, and worked enough. Then they offered me the NHL opportunity, which is ridiculous, but knew I had to say yes, because it'd be another chance to hopefully impress the people who do the hiring for the Olympics. So doing the hockey game, doing it as well as we did, impressing all the people that we wanted to at NBC. Yeah, that just threw so much wood onto that fire. And now, especially because so many of the people who I worked with on the broadcast work Olympics. And that was one of the things that I got to ask them about in our, we called a couple of practice games. So when we'd be out at dinner, okay, Renee, who was the producer, tell me about your Olympic experiences. Okay, Lisa, who was our director, tell me about your Olympic experiences. So hearing those just kind of got the blood rushing even faster and the heart pumping even faster. So yeah, after that game, now I can't wait. I don't know when the opportunity is going to come now, if it's going to be next summer with Tokyo, or if it's going to be a couple years after, but I'm just going to keep working hard and improving as best I can and keep my eye on that prize.
Do you think that the Olympics being postponed until next summer increases your chances by any means of being on that broadcasting team?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Totally on the outside looking in. I haven't spoken to anybody at NBC about that in the last couple of weeks, but I think it might, just because there was only a couple months between March 8th and when everybody was going to be either going to Tokyo or going to Stanford. So I had a feeling, even though they told me that it was kind of a last tryout, that the jobs were filled and that it was going to be just for the future. So now, like we already kind of discussed, I imagine that pretty much everybody who was scheduled to work will just be working again next year, but a year's a long time and a lot of things can change. And I have friends who were planning to work the Olympics and then get pregnant and, be on with their lives, and that this was going to be their last Olympic Games this year. And they're struggling with, do I get pregnant and just see what happens? Do I work another job next summer because it's going to pay me more money? I mean, there's so many layers for everybody who I know who's a broadcaster, just like athletes. So I think that it could be a blessing in disguise for me, that it has been postponed. At least that's what I'm going to keep telling myself for the next few months.
Do you have a specific word or phrase that is helping you through this time? That's inspiring you and motivating you to continue looking forward at your dreams of being an Olympic broadcaster and to continue looking forward to the time when you do get to return to that dream job of yours?
Yeah, great question. And the only reason I have this on the top of my head is because I'm sure so many chain letters. It feels like we're back in 1997 now, which I'm sure you were 4 years old, so you don't remember. But when chain...
Gonna be honest, I wasn't born until 1999.
Love it. I love it. Well, before you were born, like chain letters were all the rage when all of us just had AOL email addresses. And, pass along your favorite word, pass along your favorite recipe, send along your favorite picture of a puppy. And now those are all coming back right now. I don't know if you've gotten a bunch of them, but I have. And one of the ones that I got was pass along your favorite poem or phrase, or, to keep people going at this time. And it's really simple. And I actually found it, I think it was my junior year of high school when the knee thing was going on. And it was just a little sticker up on my AP Lit teacher's wall, Miss Bennett, shout out Miss Bennett. And it just said, little by little, one walks far. And it's a Peruvian proverb. And you think about it, little by little, one walks far. Okay, that's simple. It's kind of lame. What are you talking about? But the longer I have been in this industry, and it's now been over 15 years, you realize that it's kind of a play on, right? There's no elevator to success. You can't go from being a sophomore at ASU to being an Olympic broadcaster unless you either know a ton of people or you're a unicorn and you're incredible. And that does happen to a few people, but for most of us, it is a long, slow journey, and it's one step to another. It's traffic producing to traffic reporting to reporting for the San Jose Giants to then getting to be on the radio station for the San Francisco Giants. My career has been a ton of little steps. But then when I look back on it, just like if you're taking a hike, you look back to where you started and you might have only been walking for an hour and you're like, wow, look how far I've gone. So that's, since my junior year of high school, been one of my favorite quotes, because it just speaks to what life is like, especially after you're done with college. There are going to be a lot of little steps, and there's going to be breaks because of global pandemics, or because somebody in your family gets sick, or you fall in love, or there's going to be so many things that you can't expect that will happen that are going to slow things down. But I've learned that as long as I just keep taking steps, keep doing things like talking to you and doing my podcast and, updating my website and also recharging my batteries like I'm trying to do right now, those are all going to be little steps that I know a couple years from now, I'll be in Tokyo or in Los Angeles or, in a World Cup stadium. And I'll think back to this conversation and say, yeah, little by little, that's all it takes, just one step at a time. And you're going to walk pretty darn far. So that's what's been keeping me going for a long time. And that's what's been keeping me going right now too.